welcome to today's NFCA webinar. We're going to talk tech, all things technology. We have coaches who are using Blast, who are using Pocket Radar, and also a coach who's doing some things a little bit differently, creatively with cell phone, camera, and other apps. You're going to be hearing from Josh Bloomer at Duke, Mike Reed at Texas Tyler, and Bené Higgs at Stony Brook. It should be a lot of fun. We hope you enjoy, whether you're using technology right now or not. This is a great launching point for you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Here we go.
I want to talk today about our philosophy here at Duke and how we use technology, specifically today Blast, with our program, and ways I think that you can use Blast to help your athletes improve moving forward. Just a little bit of a background. I've coached at the travel ball level, the high school ball level, and now at the Division I level here at Duke. So a lot of the things that I'm doing now are similar to the things that I was doing when I was at those other levels as well. And I think they're definitely able to be done. Maybe at my level, we've got a few more resources to go a little bit more in depth, but nothing I'm going to tell you is something I don't think anyone can do at their level. So first off, for me, like, everybody gets involved with technology and they want to know what's the cool thing to do with technology. But I think you have to make sure that you're building the technology around what your philosophy is and how you plan to implement it. It has to go directly with what your goal is for your program and how it can help you. It's one thing to say we're a technology place and a technology program, but if it's not helping your athletes, it's really useless. And so for us, our philosophy is real simple. We just want to win the extra base hits battle. Whether it's doubles, triples, or home runs, everyone's not going to bang 15 to 20 out of the park, but we believe that everyone can hit a double. And so for us, we're trying to maximize the opportunity for our players to be able to do that, because at the highest levels of high school, travel, college, extra base hits are how you're scoring your runs. The ability to put 5, 6 singles together isn't often. You've got to be able to maximize your scoring opportunities. And so, to try to hit a couple doubles, then we've automatically got to run. And so for us, that's our goal. We believe in being aggressive in the zone. We don't talk about needing a perfect pitch. We just need a pitch. And so we talk a lot about what pitches can each of our kids hit and how do they hit them well. And then ultimately it's just to hit the ball hard. And so obviously most extra base hits are in the air, but we're not going to tell a kid she had a bad at bat if she's hitting the ball hard and it happens to be a ground ball. So we just want them to ultimately get into the box thinking we're going to hit the ball hard, and then we're going to look for doubles as soon as we get out of the box as often as we can. Just a quick, with my first year, some quick reference of where we were and where we are now over the course of the last three seasons. So this being our third year, the green over here on the right from 2018-19 to this year, that's just the number of spots we moved nationally with that category. And so, we just emphasized that strategy. We really used Blast to kind of help us plan how we were doing it. And we found ourselves to have a very, obviously it was a shortened season, but our success offensively had risen to points that it hadn't risen in the past. And so, we were hitting more balls into the gap. We were getting more extra base hits, scoring more runs. And the only two areas where you see a decline was in triples per game. And I'll be honest, I don't think you coach triples. I think it's just kind of sometimes things just happen that you get the triples. You have to be aggressive. But and the fielding percentage. And unfortunately, our infield coach is probably to blame for that. And that just happens to be me. So we're going to work on that next year. So I guess the big question, everyone, is how does Blast fit our philosophy? And so I wanted to sort of put up here 3 reasons that I think it fits our philosophy. And it's because it's not a guess. I'm not trusting my eyes only to make decisions. I've got data to support what my eyes may or may not be telling me. And a lot of times I think I'm seeing one thing and maybe I'm not. And so to have factual information, to have a conversation with my players is important to me. And I think also there's this big debate about whether you're talking about the feel or the real. And to me, it's both. What a player feels is legitimate, and we have to respect that. And so when they feel one thing, I have to be able to tell them, this is what you're feeling, this is what's real though, and this is how you can use it. And this is the real data, and so that when they feel certain things, maybe I'm cueing them on what they feel. So I think it gives player ownership and individualization. And so I think a big problem when you start using Blast or any other type of data data system is the players get caught up in what are the numbers, and the metrics aren't the test. And I try to tell our players that it's not about the metrics. It's about the metrics are telling you how you're prepared for the test. And so you can be, like I was, as a former teacher, I had students who may have came in and they didn't really study and they may not have been prepared, but they could ace the test that day. You can have players whose metrics aren't always the best and they can still perform well. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create success over the course of 1,000 swings as opposed to one swing. And that metric is based on one swing. And so we're looking for trends over the course of hundreds of thousands of swings to create the most consistency in those so that we give them the best opportunity for repeatability of their swing. Once they know their metrics, like it gives the players they can work efficiently and effectively on their own. So they know not that they're chasing a number, but they're knowing what the number is telling them. So when I have a kid who's got a really low rotational acceleration, my first thing is I need to check out how they're sequencing, because the easiest way to increase your rotational acceleration is to be sequencing properly. If you're not moving properly, your rotational acceleration is never going to be maximized. And so once I see if they are, maybe they're sequencing well, then I go to my next thing, which very well might be they're just not creating ground force. Like they're not staying in the ground with their feet. And so instead of me saying, I need you to increase your rotational acceleration, I use it to guide on why that number is down. I think what's really important in all of it is the metrics tell me what I need to work on, and it makes me individualize what I'm working on with players. So when we come in for our player individuals, the players aren't all doing the same individual when they come in. If I've got a group of 3 to 4 kids, their prep work, their what we call auxiliary work is all individualized to what they need. And we call them core lifts. So at the end of the day, their core lift might be that they're working on 65 hard in today. They're all going to do that core lift at the end, but how we've prepped them to do that is different based on what they do. I think right here, the goal is always to maximize each player's strengths and limit their weaknesses. And that's the goal. For me, I know what everybody wants to know is like the information, and these are the ways I incorporate it. And these are the ways I've always incorporated it. I think ranges are the best. So for us, we create player or program metric goals. So we have individual goals for the players, and then we have big board for, in general, like we want all of our players to have a bat speed within this range. And so, but then within that, we've got players who maybe are above or below that we've created some goals for them. And so in the Blast sensor, you can individualize those goals. And that's an important thing that I don't know that everybody knows. You can individualize every metric's goals by player, so that when they get a green dot, that green dot may not be the same. One kid gets a 60-mile-an-hour bat speed. That might be a green dot for her. For the next kid, that might be a red dot, just because that kid is performing under her norm. And so helping them sort of work through their individual goals is important. I will say that we never use Blast off of a tee. And I'm not saying that maybe you can't at the younger levels. For us, though, I want to know what you're doing when you're in a high competitive environment. So we do it during our scrimmages. We do it during just live individuals where we might have a pitcher fake going one-on-one against a hitter with machines. And so we typically can limit those to about 15 swings a lot of times, where we chart results. So I know swing 1 goes to this result. So then when I pull up my Blast data, I can see I have a system where this swing goes to this result, and so I can see it. So those are the only times we use Blast. Video analysis, and this is the one that I will tell you, if you just can get video, the video analysis is huge. And I want to, I'm going to try to do something here, so I just want to make sure that I'm going to screen share this. So did that new screen come up, Joanne? Okay, so for instance, this is off of our video system for us. And so I did this for our assistant coach this week, where we're working on a player. And so we're looking at 2 swings. So it doesn't matter where your video is. You can upload video from anywhere into Blast off your app. And so you're able to compare and contrast swings just side by side. And so for her, for right here, for our player here, we're able to look at two different results, and we can frame by frame slow it down if we want, side by side. And so I went through and then I put it for 50%. And so it's a way to change, change your speed, analyze it, upload those videos. Another thing that I would tell coaches that I think is a really good way to use it. Normally, I want to change my screen here. Hold on. I got this. I want to pull this up real quick. Well, I don't want to waste the time looking through it. The other thing you can do is, like, if you find a video on your phone, and so your players are out and all they're doing is just hitting, they don't have their blast up, they don't have their sensor on them that day, that's totally fine. They just need to have their phone and video. And then in their blast app, all they have to do is upload it from there. Now, you're not going to have the metrics, but for me, I think the most important thing for me when I was a travel coach and a high school coach is when my players were gone, what were they doing? And how could I help them when they weren't right in front of me? And so it's an easy way for players to be with their hitting coach, be on their own hitting, take video, immediately upload it into Blast, and then I can see it and I can analyze it and I can give feedback of that to them, which I think is awesome. For me, how do I use it? I'm looking for trends. And we were talking beforehand, before we got into the big group. I think one of the things you have to be really, really cautious of is how much info you share with your players. I think that's a really, really dangerous thing, and you have to know your players. Some of my players don't need to see any metrics ever. Some of my players really want to know why the metric is what it is. And so for me, I'm the gatekeeper of the metrics, and I have to figure out who needs what. But for me, it's my job to best prepare my players. That's my job. And so I need as much information as I need. What I want my players doing is going out and competing. That's all I want them to do. And I want to set them into environments where the training is preparing them for that. And that's how Blast helps me. I know we've got a lot of high school and travel coaches potentially in here. I will tell you, for recruiting info, if I get videos with Blast numbers, I enjoy that. Like any type of metrics, especially now with all the stuff where we can't be out and see it, if I get video with information on it, then I don't have to trust what was that bat speed, what was that pitcher's throwing. I'll be honest, it's hard to see how hard these pitchers are throwing on the videos we're getting. And so if I can see a bat speed, though, like, I don't have to trust my eyes. I know for a fact what it is. So I don't know what my time is. I think I got a couple minutes left. I think the thing about Blast, I heard earlier what metrics do I like? We actually put our Blast on and we use it before we hit BP before every game. And so our players have it and they look at the certain ones for them. In general, I would say that the ones I care the most about are bat speed. I will tell you this caveat, just trying to increase your bat speed isn't the way to go. It's a fluid. You take one piece out, everything else can change. So you have to know that link. But bat speed, rotational acceleration is huge for us. Early connection is a big one for us, and connection and impact. And so we look at those sort of trends and how they work together. For us, like, rotational acceleration is the one that kind of is the one that varies the most. And so for me, when I'm looking at my Blast numbers, if I look at it on the portal, I'm looking for as little differentiation in their numbers. I don't want, when I look at somebody's bat speed over 100 swings, I don't want the thing to do this. I want it to be really close. We want to live close to our average. If our numbers are living close to the average that we're getting, then we're consistent. But when our average is just the middle of these real high peaks and valleys, then we've got a kid who's not consistent in what they're doing, and their average metric isn't really reliable. And so that's a quick overview, and I'm blowing through it. I will say I've got this one. If anybody has questions, about it. I was in your world for a long time, and whether it's a college, a high school travel, there's my contact. Feel free to reach out at any point in time, and I'll do everything I can to assist.
Thank you so much, Josh. 14 minutes and 40 seconds. Vinay and Mike, the standard has been set. So thank you, Coach. I appreciate that. Keep those questions coming. We are going to do everything we can to get through those. So make sure you put that in there. We're going to move on. Next up is Coach Vinay Higgs from Stony Brook. Vinay is going to talk a little bit about alternative technologies, things you can do when you only have a cell phone, things you can do that are app-based, just a little bit different. So Vinay, go ahead. Feel free to share your screen, and we will get rolling here. I'll start your timer. Go ahead and take it away.
Just to give you a little background on myself, usually on any staff that I've worked on, the techie on staff, so I'm the one researching the technology, setting it up, implementing it, troubleshooting it. And I'm also on the phone a lot with these companies just talking about their products. And something that I've noticed over the years is that programs are maybe utilizing 10 to 25%, according to these companies, of what their platforms actually can give back to a program. So if you're thinking about that in terms of a $10,000 product like HitTrax, you're basically getting $1,000 to a $2,500 value. So my goal is to take the nitty gritty of the 10 to 25% and find a more cost-effective approach to implement it. In terms of getting creative with technology, a lot of it, I believe, is really just using what we have. That's phones, tablets, laptops, apps. The devices that I use are iPhones, my iPhone. And keep this in mind, as coaches, instead of trading in our iPhones, when we upgrade, the value that I was getting back was maybe $50. So it made more sense to keep mine, and I actually utilize it with the program. Same thing with my iPad. I just repurposed it for the program and utilize it instead of trading it in. My Apple MacBook Air is something that I had when I was in college. I have a Surface tablet more recently, and then I bought Coach's Eye when I was a grad assistant about 10 years ago. And because I use all of these things professionally, I use it recruiting, I use it during camps, I use it for our social media posts, I use it really for everything. I've written them off over the years. So wanted to demonstrate how simple it could be utilizing something like a MacBook Air or another laptop. And this is a video that I took using my phone, and I airdropped it to my MacBook Air. And a lot of the programs that we're purchasing, what we're doing with it is we're really just trying to slow down video to show a hitter a part of their swing. So all I was doing with this clip was I had opened up the clip. I was using 2 fingers to slide back and forth on the touchscreen. And then over what you see in the corner is you see a clip or a screenshot of that same computer screen, and a player wanted to look at video last minute, and I was able to pull up 4 different clips of 4 different hitters, and all I had to do was minimize it to put them side by side, and then I would click on a video, scroll back and forth, click on another one, scroll back and forth. I could hand that laptop to the student athlete. And I found this to be so much simpler than utilizing RightView Pro, which we were using at the time. So I even started to use this for our game footage. I would take the game footage, break it down by inning, break it down by at bat, and then just drop it into a player folder. For devices and sharing video, really the easiest way to show film is with your phone and utilizing the scroll bar. The quality of today's video on devices is more than adequate. And we might want the 4K resolution, but is the player really going to notice? And in terms of sharing video, a lot of these companies, they're trying to convince you to buy, a year's subscription of X amount of cloud storage. They talk about how we can share video on their platform with student athletes, how we can save it. All of those things, we actually have the capability within our current devices. So we know that we can send it in text. Something if you didn't know, if you don't delete your text chains, you can pull up the videos, photos, and links that you've already shared with somebody. A lot of the videos that you're seeing here, I couldn't find it right away, so I pulled up the text chain, and I was able to access those videos some 3 or 4 years ago. AirDrop, the reason why I stay with Apple is because I can AirDrop across devices, and a lot of our players have iPhones. And then also a big thing for us right now is the utilization of shared folders. So here's just a clip of what that looks like. I screen recorded my phone and my iPad side by side so you could get 2 viewpoints. So I've opened up the shared albums. You'll see how many albums I'm currently sharing with people, some with family, some with other coaches for drills, players, and we have individual player folders as well. So going into the slapping folder, this is something that I'm sharing with another coach. You can see who I'm sharing it with. And we can both drop videos into this file. We can comment on the videos, and it's really a partnership in that sense. This is our team folder. It just became easier when we were doing these team functions. They wanted access to the clips, so I just dropped it in the shared folder. So there's something like 200 plus clips in there, and you can see how many people I'm currently sharing it with. Moving over to the other side, you see my iPad, and I just wanted to give you a perspective of what it would look like from a player's standpoint. So here I'm in the slapping drills. I can collect a video there. You can see the comments. I dropped this in for one of the players, and they can comment back. They can play the video. They can save the video. They can just leave it in the folder. The thing that I like the most about it is some of our players have started to utilize this when they go home. They'll film themselves doing a drill and take that clip, drop it in the shared folder. They'll comment on it, and they'll just shoot me a text that it's in there, and I can give them feedback. So with Coach's Eye, this is just one of those apps that in the last 10 years, I've yet to find one of these apps that is as functional as this one is. It's very user-friendly, and it has a lot of the features that we're looking for. So you can do slow motion, voiceover, screen record. You have the ability to draw on clips. The Precision Pack is something that I purchased for extra features. So that's a spotlight, angles, and timer. So I can do launch angle if I want. I can do time to contact. I can compare clips side by side. And then after I've screen recorded and voiced over the clip as I'm doing all the editing to it, I can export that directly to my photo album, take that clip in the photo album, and drop it into a shared folder with a player. And here's just an example of me playing around with Coach's Eye. For those of you that might be interested in utilizing it, here is the timer, the time to contact. You can use the timer for a bunch of different things. I use it for pop times. I use it when I'm recruiting every once in a while. The thing that's nice about this is we can constantly clear pages. So as we put in mark up the videos, we can clean it up a little bit as we want to point out something else. Here is the comparing the swings and the syncing of it. I've yet to find a software program that is as seamless as this one. I think Coach's Eye have done a great job with this. So I'm just lining up contact here with the two different swings, and you hit this link button at the bottom, and it synchronizes the video, and you can just scroll back and forth. I used to do Right View Pro quite a bit, and it was really annoying to have to click on two different buttons to sync up the videos, to slow it and to show it in slow-mo, and something like Coach's Eye is incredibly effective. Something else I wanted to demonstrate is just the launch angle piece. Here's the angle feature, and once again, you have to purchase that within the package. If you want, you don't have to do it with launch angle. You can take the angle from the back shoulder, back elbow to back wrist if you want. And I know that you have to do this on a per swing basis, whereas Rapsodo and Blast and all of that, you get a database of it. But really, honestly, I feel like for our program, visually, we can really understand what launch angle is. Our players know when they pop up the ball, they know when they hit it in the ground. And if we watch them over time, we know which hitters are going to be our line drive hitters and our fly ball hitters. So I don't need a database of launch angles to tell me that. So how do you get creative on a budget? Blast, Rapsodo, Hit Tracks. If it's not in your budget, because I am a techie, I enjoy talking with these companies about, how they pull their data, what numbers do they think is really important, how other programs have implemented their product, what they think really sets themselves apart. I've talked with other coaches about how they implement this within their budget, and I'd like their feedback. They're the ones implementing it. So what numbers are you able to utilize? What numbers are a waste of your time? What are some creative uses that you found for it? And do you feel like you're actually getting your full value for what you're paying? So with that feedback, I can really quantify what that 10 to 25% is and bring it back to our program. So the numbers that they provide, I broke it down into the three things that we focus on, right? Mechanical efficiency, which includes plane, connection, rotation, attack angle, things like that. We have timing and depth, which incorporates time to contact. Your output is going to be exit velocity, launch angle, estimated distance. Using the concept of 100, 100, you know, the question becomes, how do I take those numbers and how do I apply it philosophically? So Perry Husband came up with this and talked about it at the last time I heard him speak. And he's the author of the books regarding effective velocity. And basically what the concept of 100, 100 is, if I'm hitting with 100% mechanical efficiency and 100% timing, that's the hardest you can physically hit the ball. And this can be interchangeable. So if I'm hitting with 80% mechanical efficiency and 20% timing, that is going to be the same exit velocity in theory as 20% mechanical efficiency with 80% timing. So this concept really incorporates all the numbers the other technologies provide in a simplified manner for our players to understand. I know that as I'm explaining this to you, it's getting very in-depth and complicated, but when I talk to our players, the only thing that we talk about is the efficiency and the relationship with depth and timing. So, and the way we quantify our feedback is through exit velocity utilizing pocket radar and the trajectory, right? So that's just the visual aspect of it. And when trying to create, you know, how are we going to apply the 100, 100, it was breaking down these numbers that the others program give to these, give with their platforms like rotation, attack angle, and put them into different categories. So I found that rotation, attack angle, et cetera, those body movements, that we can control them with training. And then there were other things. While we can work on swing speed and time to contact as much as we want, it's still dependent on depth and timing. So if I can work on swinging as hard as I want, but if I'm early, my swing speed's going to slow down. Time to contact is going to increase when I'm early. It's going to be lower when I'm on time. And so what we're doing is we're trying to work on efficiency through drills, and we really want to understand the relationship that these dependent numbers have so that we can improve that along with as we improve our timing and our depth. Putting it into practice, mechanical efficiency, what we're looking to do is we want to focus on small parts of the kinetic chain while hitting with exit velocity for feedback. And we will use full swing information, but the thing that I really find and is a little bit more unique is when we take the small parts and we attach exit velocity to it. I've noticed our players start to understand different portions of the kinetic chain much better and what part does it play within the swing. We're going to train this also with variability. So we're going to add in location planes and change in speeds. And then once we add in the variability, we're going to incorporate our approaches. And the exit velo feedback has really helped our players improve their understanding of why we use certain approaches. So when we add in variability, right, the location, the change in speeds, our exit velocity is going to start to decrease because they're trying to hit everything at once. And as they've implemented the approaches with the exit velocity feedback, they can see how their exit velocities are starting to slowly climb back and why we do what we do. And then for timing and depth, we use cones to work through depth and just the visual aspect of it using the exit velocity for our feedback. How do we tie the information together? We want to find the range of depth that we can hit at and maintain an optimal exit velo. We know that based on time to contact, when I'm time, it's going to be shorter than when I'm early. And so we're looking for the range that we can hit with. The other thing is we assume that when we are on time, we are more likely to be mechanically efficient. That's your high exit velocity. And we kind of work through this with our players on the relationship between both. Then it's based on the assumption that when we are early, we need to maintain mechanical efficiency to maximize exit velocity and trajectory. And what this means is this is starting to get into separation and stretch. And I use those words interchangeably. So if I'm early, I'm going to need separation and stretch to maintain mechanical efficiency, to have an optimal trajectory and exit velocity. While the exit velocity might decrease, I've improved my ability to stay on plane with that ball. And this is something that we've incorporated video with. So when we're doing our cone drills, they can see when they're on time and they can see that they don't have as much separation and stretch. And then they can and then the exit velocity is higher. And then we'll show them when they're early using our cone setup, and they can see the separation that they're gaining in order to maintain an optimal exit velocity. So even though their numbers are decreasing, they're doing something really well with the swing. When we're doing the training, the way we track the numbers is I just put together an Excel spreadsheet to record the progress. I had been using the Pocket Radar app and exporting it into Excel, but I found it just to be easier to use pencil and paper. So as the players are reading out the exit velos to each other, they're recording it as well. And I just add it into the Excel sheet after practice. What are we looking for? We're looking for max exit velocity each day. So as we increase variability within the drills, the numbers are going to change. So the first week when we were doing down the middle, we had a high exit velo and we had a high average exit velocity. But as soon as we added in and out or change in speed, the numbers started to decrease. So with average exit velocity each day, we're trying to stay within 85% of what our max exit velo is. And that is no matter the location of the plane. So what this implies is a strong mechanical efficiency relative to timing and depth or vice versa. And something that we noticed while doing this and talking with Perry Husband, he was talking about 90%, and this is relatively new. There's not a lot of teams kind of implementing exit velocity in this manner, so there's really not much data on it. But we couldn't stay within the 90-90 after we got outside of working down the middle. So our better players, when we add in change in speed, they're working around 83%. And when we're just working inside, outside in planes, we're as high as 87%. So that's how I came up with 85. And then our other hitters we're still working through some different aspects. They're going to be sitting between 80 and 85%. In terms of depth and timing, we really just utilize cones. So the position 3 cone, we position 3 cones at 3 different depths. We have early, slightly early, and on time. So the front cone, when they're in their stance, you can see in this clip or this photo, she's actually finished her swing, but we're lining these cones up based on the stance. So the front cone is going to be slightly in front of the front knee. The middle cone is going to be about belly button, and the back cone is going to be back hip. And what we're doing is we're just hitting a ball at each spot and giving the exit velo feedback. So we pretty much right now have just done 1, 1, 1, and we just repeat the drill. You can increase the number of reps however you want to do it. And what they found is that they really have to work on their mechanical efficiency, that separation at that front cone in order to maintain an optimal exit velocity and trajectory. And then as they work on the deeper cones, the swing becomes much simpler and their exit velocity continues to increase. And we're going to do this for all locations. For the full field visual, this is my version of hit tracks. Hit tracks is basically about eliminating tunnel vision. That's why you're able to hit full field on their screens. So what I do for that is I'm just going to put down a set of 4 cones and mark off foul line to gaps. When we were doing this, I realized that our players were thinking back up the middle to the far back corner of the cage was actually left field or right field, and they didn't realize that that was straightaway center and hitting right at the center fielder. So when we were working on driving the ball oppo, they weren't really maximizing depth and exit velocity. They were working on yanking the pitch. So we put down cones so they can kind of get a full sense of the range of the field that they're playing with. And between the exit velocity and the trajectory, when the ball comes off the bat, they can kind of get a sense of what part of the field they're hitting at. We just want to make sure that when we're hitting and training, especially indoors, I mean, there is a reason why you go back up the middle at times, but we also want to make sure we're maximizing our barrel contact at all locations to the field. I want to be able to square up an inside pitch and stay inside of it as much as I also want to be able to work up the middle with it. So the other thing we'll do is we'll have these cones working diagonally, increasing in depth as it gets further away from you. So down on the bottom, it's set up for a right-handed hitter, and working with the back 3 cones, we're looking middle out. So the middle out cone is about the belly button, the corner is about the back hip, and the river is working just behind the back hip. And we're just trying to increase the range and plate coverage that we're dealing with, because we all know we stumble across those umpires that call that zone and or the pitcher that can hit it. So when we're doing this in practice, we make sure that we use and record exit velocity for every cut. This gives our hitters an idea of 100-100, and we can apply growth week to week and see how they're improving. The other thing is we want to make sure that we get our numbers outside and provide them with understanding of what they look like, so that when we go indoors, they have a better reference. And then also when we improve our numbers indoors, we'll take those numbers and do it outside when we get a chance so they can see how they're growing and how it applies. So with the depth, the timing, and the cones, Our players have really learned to feel separation and what it takes to maintain efficiency when early. They have a better understanding of their optimal depth at different locations. For the full field visual, I've really enjoyed that aspect of it because we were able to minimize the tunnel vision. This spring, we didn't get outside a lot before we played our first game. And despite that, we were hitting live with good exit velo right off the bat to all fields. The consistency wasn't there yet, but as we played more games, about that 15th game that we played this season before the pandemic hit, we were starting to see the consistency start to increase. The other thing is it's really started to help them understand how every kind of hit has its place. So in the beginning, when we were doing this indoors, they would get frustrated about the 74-mile-an-hour ground balls some of them were hitting. But as soon as we went outside, they saw that these 74-mile-an-hour ground balls were also reaching the fence when nobody was in front of it. And then their understanding just continued to grow when we were playing live games and they would hit these hard ground balls and it would get past the second baseman and still reach the fence and beat the outfielders in the gap. So they really started to appreciate just the fact that their ground balls were harder, their bloops were harder, everything was harder, and how it came into play in a live scenario. And then, the players have really enjoyed this feedback with the indoor training. They felt like it minimized a lot of the distractions that come with repetitive training indoors as a cold weather school. They felt that they were more comfortable in the batter's box early in the year and also hitting with command to all fields. And the best thing about this was on a dollar budget, right? Like the pocket radar I purchased and wrote it off. I purchased it myself and wrote it off on my taxes. And we utilized cones and just Excel to track exit velocity and average exit velocity.
Thank you, Benet. We appreciate that. Great information. Let's go to Coach Reed. Mike Reed from Texas Tyler. Go ahead, take it away.
I appreciate it. I want to thank Coach Wiley. Benet talked about being the techie on her staff. I am not the techie on our staff, but I do love the numbers. So that is a bad combination from my associate head coach because she has to provide me those numbers a lot, and I like to see them. I just don't like to do the work. So as we go through this, I'll give her a lot of credit for that. Just review our use of the pocket radar was kind of the topic I was given here. That was our original technology purchase back in when budgets are always a concern, and we were first kind of trying to get into the technology side. That was our cost-effective entry. We started with a pocket radar. That was our beginning. We've grown that now, and they've gotten to the coach now and allow us to do some other things with it. But that's where we got started. And again, we'll talk about. We look at it. We've got some complex timing technology available that we'll have going in the cage that maybe takes a little bit more time for the feedback, but we feel like our pocket radar is our simple and quick that we can have going in the station, and we'll talk about that gives us instant feedback. There's no reliability issues. We just really gives us a quick, simple version that we'll use along with the other technology that we're being talked about. We have 3 pocket radars. I had 3 since we've had time to clean up. We've lost one, but we're in search of it. It'll show back up, I'm sure. We always have 2 monitors. I love the display monitors, and we'll talk about why I like that so much as we go through it. For our work, we've always got 2 iPads in our cage working at any given time, whether that's early work or during our practices or during the middle. We got 2 tripods. We always have 1 or 2 big tripods to display. And then we'll always have kind of that funky little flexible one that pocket radar sends you that we'll have just have as much as we can going there. The basic 2 pieces of data that we'll collect from pocket radar, and we'll talk about our uses, are batted exit velocity. We use that a ton. And then our thrown ball velocity, which is both overhand for our position players, and the most obvious one that we probably all use it for is the underhand version for our pitching. But we'll use both of those, and we'll talk about how we do those. Our 2 major settings that we're going to use it in, and again, the most common one is we take the pocket radar out recruiting, and we're behind a backstop, but we use it in practice probably as much or more than we do there. And then our camps and recruiting, we'll talk about what data we're specifically pulling out or how we're using it as we go through. And again, it's just our quick, reliable setup each day. We bring that. We have a player that's in charge of technology. Her job is to make sure it all gets brought out for us and there for us as we go forward. I'll just start with our practice, our most common. For us, our most common is a T station in the cage. This picture on the right shows kind of a setup, and we'll have a better glimpse in a minute, but you'll see the pocket radar hanging on the net with the clip. We'll have the monitor out, and this day we got the iPad out if we wanted to film inside of that. Again, in a BP setting, we'll come back to that in a second too, but on the field some, we will take it out, and you can see that over on the right, which will have a better shot of that. The next one, we've got the pocket radar out. We'll use it on the field some as we go. For us, the benefit, and there's been times we've had 2 coaches on our staff. So we're running a BP where we've got, you know, a coach on the field running live, and then we've got 1 coach in the cage for 4 or 5 possible stations going. So we always worry about the drill quality if we're in the cage and there's a coach not on that one. So we really feel like our Pocket Radar can be another coach for us, that we can create in that station where we're not particularly there, or we're running a different technology that requires more feedback in that side, that we can go and create competition, which is my favorite part of it. And so that's something they can do. And typically in our BP, especially if we're doing some slower moving drills or we're breaking some stuff, if we're trying to speed them back up before live, our last station will be the exit speed with the display going, where they're competing a little bit, we're speeding them back up, and that'll be the last station before they rotate to me on the field. And we'll either document that day what that was, or they'll have to come, when they come to the field, we'll just have a little competition. They'll race out to tell me who won the exit velocity for that day. We can even change it. We may go away, middle and end, a certain location that day to get some location feedback, and maybe that ties into on the field that day where we're measuring just away or middle or what have you. But and in the early work and individual group setting, individual times, we really like it, because a lot of times, I think like Coach Bloomer talked about, the feel, sometimes when you're working with an athlete, you're trying to sell that feel and there's nothing there to measure. And so it's almost you versus them in that feel, or what you're saying, you're seeing in them. What I love about the technology is when we're doing this, it really puts you on the same side. And so now you're working together, and it's like they're viewing the display or whatever data we're coming out of there as the opponent, and you're the adversary. So I really like how technology pairs us on the same team with that. And then for us, what are we taking this batted, exit ball velocity? Again, we're just constantly, anything we're doing, we want measures in our program. Is what we're doing in our program, what's it yielding? It's one thing to do it and say it's getting better, but what can we see? It is the trends, like I know Coach mentioned trends. What are the trends? Are we improving? So we're constantly pulling this data out and putting this, we take all this data and just put it in a simple Excel sheet and by player. So everything we're pulling, whether it's in practice or at a camp, and then we stack it at the end and we can rate it, and then Coach Wiley can pull these out for me and put them in whatever chart I want to see. And then going forward, we're really trying to do a little bit more under overload bat stuff. Some of the training bats are on the market. That's going to be a big push for us this fall. And so we'll probably test even more, and so that we can really track and see, are we getting gains from what we're doing, or do we need to adjust what we're doing, giving them as a coaching staff. So that's kind of our setup and how we do that inside of practice. For the exit speed, there's just a closer look. This particular setup, sometimes we'll move them outside the windscreen if I'm afraid somehow that ball is going to sneak around there and grab that. The display monitors, and then on the field, you can see we've got on the little tripod, and then we'll have the speaker. This particular day, you can hear it. When you're in the app, you can hear it just being displayed through your iPad. I'll talk about why I love the speaker part of that to make it louder when we get to the camp stuff. But anyway, that's kind of our setup there, that our typical use of the Pocket Radar for exit velocity. This is just a video. We had already done the drill work, so we've already had feedback of the previous days, and so we kind of know what we're targeting with this kid may be different. So we will have already gone through some of our drill work, and now we're trying to get to the end and kind of put it together and just challenge her to speed back up. So you'll see in this video, just by challenging her, I'm giving her 3 or 4 swings to finish out the round, and by having display, you'll see where she starts, and she probably wouldn't be proud of me showing this first number, but. So now I'm cueing those things that we've talked about in our early work. Again, just giving us a quick number. We don't have the blast in this particular one, but you can see the gains just by her seeing it. Again, cueing some of our early work. So she was able, just by getting that initial feedback, we've gone from 57 to 65. And I know there's some variables, but it gives us a really expensive post-contact number versus all the pre-contact numbers that we're getting. Just our on-the-field usage. Again, and you can hear the speaker, which I'll reference in a minute. We have her filming. We were able to go in the app. It automatically downloads the radar app. We don't have to stop and start it. So it's getting filed in there with her name, with her picture. It'll quickly show that. So you can hear the speaker going. You can see the Pocket Radar. Again, we can file that away. We may have another iPad going with something with blast or something else in the cage, but this gives us something a little quicker moving on the field. And then at the end, it puts us together if we need to stop and see something. Maybe we don't. Maybe it was good in the cage. We're trying to build on what we were talking about. Maybe on that, we're in a good place and we just don't that day. Or it's that kid that just can't see it, but maybe it's that kid that needs to see it that day. So anyway, it just kind of puts us on the overhand velocity for us. We're constantly testing that, just the normal what you would think. This just shows a couple of videos. Typically, I'd be hitting. I wouldn't be throwing it like an old man there, but throwing from the outfield to home plate, and then we'll have our display set up behind. We'll do this both, and again, for camp, when we get to be the same setup. We test every seasonal transition with this. So as they come in, before we start individuals, we get these numbers for them. At the end of our individual period, we test again. We test again at the end of the team. So every change, are we progressing? Are we seeing gains? Do we see anything that makes us need to change what we're doing when they come back in the season? Plus, I'll talk about, we really want this data for us so when we get to camps, we can really have something to compare our campers to and our recruits. Again, it's just about, team tracking your team in development charts. So we can put this in Excel, and I'll show you one of the forms. This is one of our current players now. As a recruit, came in, getting back, she was an All-American for us back-to-back, starting with a kind of a low overhand, but came in as a senior. So we're able to pull that data out and watch her growth and see where she's going. Is she getting stronger? Is her arm getting better inside of our program? Or is there something trending that we're not? To me, it's a really simple sample of metrics we can get, that we can track, that we feel good about. And we'll have our team on this same kind of chart. Does anyone go in a different direction? And so that's just one example of us pulling that out and tracking and making sure we're doing right. We'll evaluate our strength and conditioning program. We had a new strength and conditioning coach come in. So we're really paying attention to the numbers and feel good about any changes in our program, changes in our training, our long toss programs. What are we throwing? What's our throw load for that time of the year? What's it not? Just really paying attention to that versus them just telling me, hey, I don't want to throw that day or whatever. Really got some numbers to go with that. The other thing I think is one that we had it really helped us with a medical issue. We were tracking that, and we had this one kid that went, you can see the drop. And so then we noticed in the weight room, we noticed the BP. Come to find out, it really helped us figure out she had a medical issue going on. And so we were able to really put some dots together that we weren't able to see. And so you can see her growth. We've almost got back. She was able to get some treatment, get the medicine, and doing better now, you can see. But just kind of, it was one that came down the trend that made us took a closer look at her. Pitcher's velocity, normally we'll have two pins going at once. Obviously the pocket radar, you can sit up in the middle. We can get both going at the same time. We're always going to track our pin, our live scrimmages always. And we're always going to track most of the time, our pins. We're just looking for the same thing in that graph. We're tracking in-season velocities on our pitchers. Do we see anything that's going against the trend of up? Anything that jumps out that's an issue for us, our strength coach, tracking just like we saw in that hitter, we're tracking our pitchers from the development, from the time they get as a recruit. Are they growing in our program? Are they getting stronger? We use it a lot for trying to judge our preseason, and I can show you one of our forms here. The top one is if we're going live, and I do want them to radar. We'll have an off-pitcher radaring, and we want them to go from the 1st to the 7th. We want to get that late inning reading. Same thing with our bullpens at the bottom. We'll do readings at the beginning, middle, and end. And so we'll just take this simple document we're writing in, it gets put into an Excel, and then that's what we pull from what we necessarily want to go. Important preseason loads, are we building up? So as we're getting them ready, as you're ramping them up for spring, we're tracking each kid, and we know roughly pitch count. This kid starts fatiguing at 55 miles an hour. At 55 pitches, or where is she fatiguing? How far are we away from having her ready for opening weekend of 2 or 3 games? So we just really use that. Obviously, we're tracking our speed, our pitchers' speed improvement. So you can see the chart. 4 of our pitchers were growing, getting better, improving velocity, and then one kind of took a dip in the trend. So we had to go back. Is that a work ethic issue? Is that a training issue? Is that an injury? So just anything that goes against the curve for us. I know I'm going fast here. I'm trying to stay in the time allowed. And then one of ours that we use a lot is this speed separation. If our kids are working, I want them to know and get feedback when they're working off speed. What is that speed difference? That look better to our eye. What is that? What is our speed difference? Obviously, with hitters, we're trying to change speeds. So they can see up on that. If we're within 2 or 3 miles per hour for too many pitches, they can really get that feedback. One of our pitchers that came in this year for us, or a couple of years ago, came in for us, and she didn't throw really hard. She spun it a lot, but you can see the difference between her really good off speed and her hard pitches was not a lot. And so over time, as she's gotten stronger in the weight room, that speed difference has increased. And I can tell you at 11.5 difference, and we track this now with her a lot. She went from not throwing a lot for us to being our #1 pitcher this year just because that difference made her off speed better. So that's just simple data we're pulling out from the pocket radar into an Excel sheet for our overhand pitchers. I know I got a couple minutes. Camp setting. Some of this will be repetitive, so I'll go a little quicker. We'll use it in camp the same way as a T-station because I want it to be similar. We will use it on the field as well. Obviously, after each, we have a camper tab for each camp that we have, each data that we take up, and we do it so we can sort it by metric that we measured on those campers. So obviously, at the end of each camp, we're taking exit velocity, overhand velocity, and comparing it to camper and seeing who's the best. But then I really want to be able, because we're projecting and recruiting, how does that look compared to what your kids are doing now? And so for, we took 2 exit velocity comparisons. So 2 recruits we had in on camp. Those kids tested tied for first in the top 5 compared to some of our current players. So that made us feel, give us this more feedback on making a decision on them. We're feeling good about having them committed, actually. So as we move forward, so just feedback and comparison. So we do this a lot from camps. We probably use as much there. And then the campers versus themselves, we struggle with that kid that commits as a sophomore, and now we're having those conversations in junior and senior. Are you continuing to stay hungry, or have you plateaued or regressed? And those are tough if you don't have any numbers. So we talk about how many tournaments you're playing. Are you staying active with your travel team? But also we're using these numbers. We're tracking them from the first camp until arrival. And so that we can, I'll show you one on our overhand velocity. So if we come to them and say, we don't feel like you're improving, or you've taken the foot off the gas a little bit, there's some data to go with that versus just what we're seeing or feeling. Overhand, same thing, camper versus camper. We'll do campers versus our team. So this is just a chart we took. So overhand velocity, we had a kid come in and throw well. So just comparing it, one was more in the middle of our team, but we're constantly pulling that data and running it against our current team. Where does that rate? Where's she at on that? And then again, the one through the process. So one of our 2020s came in, her overhand velocity at 64, stay there for a year, and then she really got in with a personal trainer in the last year. And so she's doing a college style, what I would call a college style workout, and we can see the gains. So we were able to give her praise at the last camp, showing 3 miles an hour gain, goes along with us reinforcing that that's going to help her be ready for the college setting. So again, just pulling that data, we'll track that card on every committed kid on 3 or 4 different metrics just to see, are we growing and continuing to improve with that. And then the camp, we'll always have the velocity, and this is my last slide, and I'll be done here. We love the speaker because, I call it the truth teller or the truth serum sometimes in recruiting. So we get different reports of, you get different variations of what that is. So we're going live at camp. We're going to have our other technologies in the cage. We may have Rapsodo in the cage. We may have other things going where we're working with our pitching coach, but we're on the field. I want that speaker loud. So when they're pitching, regardless of what they can or can't do, we're not going to debate over what they can or what their max is or is not. But everyone's going to know what they threw that day at our camp. So we're able to see it for the stands and all. I think hopefully you can hear that. We'll have it cranked up. So as they're throwing during the game, it's a little intimidating, but that's all right. We want to see a little pressure applied anyway. But everyone leaves knowing what we saw from a velocity standpoint in camp, from the fan, parents, everyone. So we like that piece of it. We just laugh and call it the truth teller box. So we just know where we're at inside of that. So again, the pocket radar, that's kind of how we take the overhand velocity, underhand, just some of the data we're pulling out. I think it's a simple Excel pull thing that we can track a lot, but that's kind of stuff we key in on, is checking our recruits and a lot of comparison with our team out of camps, and just making sure as a program, are we doing the right things in the weight room, in our practice, and our throwing loads and our long toss to see positive gains. If that goes down, we need to look as a coaching staff. So that's kind of our use on pocket radar. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Coach. Let's dive into your questions. You guys can all unmute. We're just going to rapid fire these at you. So, Coach Bloomer, coming to you first. How often would you recommend a player use a blast sensor?
We use them every day. We just don't use them on tee work, but we use it every day.
Perfect. Thank you. Where do you guys find, we'll give this to everybody, where do you find the information that compares athletes of different abilities to the numbers they create on the Vice? Coach Reed, let's start with you on this one. I know you've kept a little database of comparing players. Do you have other resources for those numbers? You're on mute there, Coach. There you go.
Most of the companies, the technology companies' websites will give you some general guides. We may say pro level, high school level, college level. That can give you some starting points. Sometimes that's discouraging when I start with our kids. So some of those, but there's some metrics there you can start with. And I think as you build your teams and you build your base with Excel, you can slowly move to what was your All-American levels. And sometimes, like Coach said earlier, sometimes some of our best metrics aren't always our best hitters. And so keeping that in mind, but I think some of the companies will give you that. The different companies will have those beginning, and you can build your own through your tracking over time with camps and really kind of develop your own range.
Coach Bloomer, how about you?
The Blast has those already preset in there. I think the thing you have to watch for, I think those are based on the average kid at that level. So if you have a kid that maybe is performing a little bit higher, maybe you can change your metrics for that kid to individualize them. And if you have somebody that's a little bit lower and they're young, I think you would change them down. So I think for us at our level, we kind of look at what we have. It's kind of, there's not a big variance about where our kids go. Our kids all kind of tend to fall in this one general area for most of our metrics.
Thanks. Coach Higgs, any numbers you use?
Yeah. When the thing that I actually have liked the most about utilizing this average exit velocity and max is that it's very true to each individual player. One thing that we did have to make very real to the players is that just because one player hit 77 miles per hour for their max doesn't mean that a 62 mile an hour pitch coming off the barrel doesn't go out as well. So we have just a variety of types of hitters, and no matter what, if your max exit velocity is going to be 52 miles per hour, there's still an 85th and a 90th percentile that you're going to have. So it's very relative to a younger age group because you can train within those numbers and try and get your averages up.
Thank you. Coach Bloomer, why do you choose not to use the Blast on the tee?
Because I want the environment I'm using to be the game like. So if you do it, you will find the numbers when you hit off of a tee are always skewed higher than what they are when you go to live games. And so because there's no timing effect, there's no stress involved. We play in a stressed environment with balls coming, whatever your level is, at a very high rate of speed. So we have to see how our players perform when the stress is on them.
Gotcha. Next question for everybody. What are some of the more creative ways you've helped your athletes understand the numbers and the technology? Benet, let's start with you on this one.
When we started doing it, we actually did it indoors first before we went outside. And so as we were compiling numbers and, we used cones to kind of show full field, right? What was foul line, what was gap, and they had a sense of that. And then when we went outside, they could see their numbers happen real time. And what they actually started to find out was that a ground ball that is hit, you can hit a ground ball at 74 miles per hour exit velocity, and that ground ball is actually going to carry to the fence. So it kind of opened their eyes about the possibilities of a hit is a hit. It doesn't have to be in the air off the wall. So that's kind of just changing the situation that with they're seeing the numbers and the visual outcome of it.
Coach Reed, how about you and creative methods?
I think you got to start simple. I mean, I think you can't, really start with a number or two and build and then educate. We try to use some of the videos and just try to teach especially at the beginning, we were rolling Blast out, what those numbers were, some of the definitions of the videos that came with it. We were trying to educate them and start with one or two. I think you got to keep it simple to begin with. If you overwhelm them with too many numbers right out of the gate. But I think educating them what those numbers are, giving them some feedback before you go into it, gives them some understanding. And then, like Benet said, once you do that, then they see the real world application of that. But they have to understand. I think you need to go slow and explain it. I don't know if any creative way, but each kid's going to learn it quicker, slower, based on kind of how they're programmed.
Thank you. Coach Bloomer?
I think it's the same. You have to kind of figure out a way to explain it. For instance, when we talk about on-plane percentage, I use the saran wrap. So we're always trying to pull the saran wrap to get the saran wrap out. But if you pull the saran wrap out level, it's fine. You can tear it off. But as soon as you move, it all crinkles up. Well, that's on-plane percentage. The longer you can pull that saran wrap out and keep it from crinkling up, that's staying on plane. So we just talk about it in ways like that for them to understand. A lot of things, there's a lot of confusion, like on-plane percentage. Like my on-plane percentage was high. How did I miss it? Well, on-plane percentage doesn't tell you were on the right road. It just tells you were on the same road. And so if you're on the wrong road the whole time, like you missed. And so you can have those high on-plane percentages when you just foul tip a ball. So I think it's, verbiage, just being able to connect on it at a different level is important. And I think the biggest thing as a coach is we have to be able to speak. For me, I've got 26 players this year. I've got to be able to speak 26 languages and say the same message. And that's the important part. If I try to say the same exact thing to every single kid, it's only going to connect probably with one. So that's my job.
Thank you. How about using tech in practices for accountability? Are there ways that you use tech to hold players accountable? Coach Reed, let's start with you.
I think kind of what we just touched on for us, anywhere we just can't have a coach if we can create competition or, if they know, if live's going and you're going to go back and look at some of those blast numbers later, I think, especially live setting, they're going to know some feedback's coming from that. So from that accountability, and I agree that the more you can do that in live, it encompasses timing. So now they're having what are their numbers when they have to time the pitch up? How much of the chain are they losing through the process? But I think, having a cage station or having something, especially where it's just creating competition or tracking, any accountability you can make there, especially if a coach can't be there at that particular moment, you're going to get more out of that drill.
Thank you. Coach Bloomer, how about you?
We try to put it out as much as possible. If we go live, radar guns up, so it's posting on the scoreboard whenever we're going live. Pitchers know what we're going. Hitters know what they're facing. I think in general, players want to have success. And so I think it's maybe instead of holding them accountable for effort, it's holding them accountable. You might think you're performing at your best, but this is kind of showing you might have a little bit more. And then if they're saying things like Coach, I'm giving it all I got, then we might have an injury. We may have some fatigue going on. So I think it's accountable on all of us because ultimately we're all working together. And
thank you. Coach Higgs.
Yeah, something that I've really had to work through is I'm a big believer in I'm not going to implement something that if we can't do it well. And so we have some constraints, with us there being 3 coaches and we have different responsibilities. So we'll use some of these numbers in purely a training setting. And what we try to do when we go live, we tend to spend more of our time tracking, hits and RBIs and whatnot. So we'll use that data. But what I do try and do is I will point out that how their average exit velocities as it starts to get to a higher percentage. That means is their barrel path is they're getting more plate coverage. So they can see the translation to some of their live results. But for high school coaches or coaching staffs that only have 1 or 2 people, I don't take it from the training area into the game if I can't implement it with a purpose and for them to understand, because then it kind of clouds all the stuff we're getting on the training side.
Thank you. Coach Bloomer, I think you touched on this already. Feel free to add anything to it. What are the biggest data points and metrics that you want to see specifically for recruitable age kids? So that 16 and under to 18 and under. And then we'll go Coach Reed, Coach Higgs.
For me, it's if I have all the technology, it's bat speed, exit velocity, rotational acceleration. Those would be the 3.
Thank you. Coach Reed?
Same, bat speed. We do look a little at vertical bat angle, attack angle to see if there's any what we call backside, front side numbers with our kids. I think you'll label any backside issues early, any path or steep to contact or anything like that. But if we can get those, and I'll reiterate what Coach said, if you're able to send those videos during this time right now where you can have that data at the bottom for us for comparison's sake, I would agree. But bat speed, and then we'll look at the exit speed, but then vertical bat angle a little bit too.
Thanks. And Coach Higgs.
Yeah, I've really simplified it down just to exit velocity because that tells us a lot about what we're doing on the front end of it. And the way I kind of proportion out to the field is we want that exit velocity to be similar or the same across all parts of the field, right? So when they start hitting with the visual pieces, we want to see the exit velocity stay consistently high, hitting to all fields.
So maybe my favorite question so far, it's easy to collect the data. What do you do with it? So for you guys, when you look at the data that you have, what are the biggest factors of interpreting it and then applying it into competitive action? Let's go Coach Reed on this one.
I think this is the key, and like Vinay said, if you can't apply it and be consistent, and like Coach Bloomer said, watch trends. It can't be a snapshot here and there. I think that's not going to do great by your kid. You have to decide what do you want to track in your program, and then what do you want to track per kid. And as you dive into individual training sessions with your kids, you'll find what one or two numbers affect them the most, where that will probably dictate a lot of your training. But I do think you have to be able to apply it and have certain transitional times of the year where you're testing this, or you've got to do it over a long haul to really do your kid justice in tracking it. So setting up in a way, whatever resources you have, how can I go back and make sure I'm reassessing this and getting feedback, and not just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and see if it sticks, but kind of a long-term approach to it. I think that's key.
Coach Bloomer, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's the intimidating part for everyone is I have all these numbers. I don't know what they mean, and I don't know what to do with them. It's one of the things I actually like about Blast is they've cut down a little bit of my work. When you go into Blast, like they will create, you pick your metric, you've got the month, the last 3 months, you pick the timeline you want to measure, and you just create an Excel spreadsheet. It does that for you with those trends. And so what I would say is pick out what you want to measure. And it really doesn't matter. It just has to mean something to you. Pick it out and tell your players you have 10 and under team. Girls, we're going to work on bat speed. And that's it. Then let that just be all you track, and then pull it out. It's really as simple as sometimes it's me writing down the numbers and I create an Excel spreadsheet and I hand put them in. Like sometimes it really is me doing that till 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever it takes. So, everybody's times are different in terms of what they can allocate for it, but it can be as simple or as advanced as you want.
Coach Higgs, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think, that Excel spreadsheet that I came up with, that was a lot of trial and error, and I wasted a lot of time doing graphs and some other things. So that is a part of the learning process. I do encourage you, though, as you're implementing it, it's just watch the numbers, but more importantly, it's about watching your players and what's going on with it. And are the numbers corresponding to what you're seeing? So it's a lot of reflection on that end. When you take the time to watch, the numbers start to make a little bit more sense, and then you can highlight those key features and then just kind of get rid of a lot of the other stuff. Because those numbers, as much as it confuses players, it can also confuse and put hitting coaches on the wrong path as well.
Thanks, guys. Good question in the chat here. If you're looking to incorporate a device into your program for the first time, what do you recommend first steps for budgeting, convincing administration, etc.? Josh, let's start with you.
If you have a very, very limited budget, I would say a pocket radar is probably pretty good. If you have money out and you can just sort of spend it, I would say the hit tracks.
Coach Reed?
Same thing. I think pocket radar is kind of your entry into it. And then you got, there's pre-contact and post-contact, different technology. If you spend on one side, if your pitching coach convinces you to spend on one side, maybe you got to go a little bit more inexpensive. But I think pocket radar at the beginning, and all the way up to, like, I agree, hit tracks or some of those that are, big ticket items. But I think pocket radar for when we first started, and there's 2 coaches and a few $100. That's where we started.
Coach Higgs?
Yeah, as I was looking at a lot of the other programs, I wanted something right now, and I actually went with the pocket radar and bought it out of pocket and wrote it off on my taxes. Anything else that we do, we run camps and try and create budgets for it. But really, honestly, with this 1 year of using the pocket radar in our training, I would buy 2 or 3 more of those before I would invest in something a little bit bigger, because we just got the most bang for our buck with that.
Another question in the chat, a little more technical. Josh, I think you might have answered this earlier, but placing the pocket radar for a hitter for exit velocity and for pitchers. Mike, do you want to talk about what you do there and if there's any interference or just best practices for that?
Yeah, obviously in the cage, we'll go in front, as much as you can to go in front of that. And then sometimes we'll do that on the field. We don't use the field quite as much. It's more just feedback. But I know Coach Bloomer, I think, commented, you'll get some interference if you're behind with the bat speed. Sometimes going in, we try to be in front in the cage as much as possible. And then on the field, we'll get some interference if we're behind, just because I don't want to take a chance and somehow it gets smashed. We don't use quite the numbers as detailed on the field. We won't record those as much as we will when we're in front.
Thank you. Question on parents here. Coach Bloomer, I'm going to come to you, your recent time with high school and travel ball. How can parents educate themselves with Blast specifically? If their team is using a Blast sensor, what should they know I think the actual text on the question was, teach me how to fish as a parent. So
yeah, so this is what I think one of the best things that Blast does. If you go into the app, if you just download that, they've got basically tutorials on what every metric means, drills for every metric. You can go to their YouTube page and they've got those same drills and drills that aren't on the app. They've done a really, really good job of becoming user-friendly for their clients. And so I think what I have found is people just don't want to search. And so if you're willing to do the search and go in and watch, the clips are usually less than 2 minutes. There's drills. I've got some drills on there. There's some drills from Lauren Chamberlain. I know they now have added slap drills in there. So it's pretty user-friendly.
thank you. Next question. When does the breakdown become dangerous to the player? You each talked on this a little bit about, giving the players too much information. What are the things you look for other than the dazed and confused eyes on when too much is present for the player? Coach Reed, let's start with you.
I think like Coach Bloomer said, you're going to learn to speak a different language almost for each one of your kids. You're going to have to feed them. Some really absorb it and do well from it. Some you've got to use a little bit and some a lot. So just that day-to-day interaction. If you see performance start to go down, or you can almost spot the mechanical, looking mechanical and not just competing when on the field. Certain times of the year we'll use it more. If we're in individuals, we'll obviously use it more as we get closer to the season. We'll just use it for troubleshooting, or somebody gets outside in a trend, so to speak, as much drilling down. But I think you're just going to watch your kids and see how they perform, and hopefully you can pick up on that. Or if you see performance dropping, or the constant questions or body language when they get a positive result, but they don't like this or that. But I think reading your kids is where it starts.
Thanks. Coach Bloomer?
For me, it's when they start looking for the numbers instead of looking at how they're barreling balls, then I know that that's a kid I've got to have a conversation with. When the numbers become the priority as opposed to results, then we have a problem.
Yeah, I'd say with that, the same could be true with just your online stats, right? The average and slays, it's a lot the same there. Coach Higgs, your thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of echo what they're saying. I'll touch on a little bit more of an individual aspect is when I'm having conversations with the players, when they're talking to me more about the numbers than the emphasis of what the drill is, then I know that their mind has started to steer off in the wrong direction. So something I try and do to kind of make sure that's very clear with our players is every time we're talking about drills and what we're looking for, the emphasis is specifically what we're working on and what we're looking to accomplish, so that we can kind of make sure that they're on the right track.
Well, thank you all very much. I think we have covered the wide array of questions. Thanks for hanging out a little bit longer with us. Just a reminder, we do have another panel just like this coming up next week. We'll feature some different coaches and different technologies, and I hope everybody can come back and just grow and learn with us. So a huge thank you, Coach Bloomer, Coach Reed, Coach Higgs. Thanks for joining us, sharing your information. And just a reminder, this will be archived. It will be in your coach's box tomorrow, and you'll be able to access it in its entirety, presentations and all. Hopefully you can have a chance to check back in or share with your staff. So thanks, everybody, and we will see you again hopefully tonight. We've got a great conversation coming up tonight, 8 o'clock. Educate to Elevate. Check out your email. Check out our website, What's New, nfca.org, and I would love for you to participate in that. Until next time, I'm Joanna Lane, Director of Education with the NFCA, and this has been our Tech Forum again next week. So mark your calendars. Thanks, everybody.